Hey, this is Kirk Hillier, and my co-host, Rusty Bird, who always chimes in and kind of MCs the beginning, is working tonight. He works for the State Department. It's the end of the year. He's got something to do to the White House, so he may be joining us later. But welcome to the Kirk and Bird Show. We're excited. We've got a great panel. This is our VHSL high school football preview. We are going to go Class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to cover the entire state. And before we get going, I just wanted to ask everybody, please subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We're not on Discord and we're not on Snapchat. We can't do that, but we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and many others. And then if you want to listen, like at the gym or in your car, Spotify, Audible, Google, and Apple. So before we get going, I want to introduce our panel, and I will start with the way that I see things. Everybody knows that Zoom is always the Hollywood squares. So Tim Hayes is from Bristol, Virginia. He writes for the Bristol Herald Courier. He and I have communicated, and Tim is going to be covering basically Withville down, and there's basically two big reasons. Is it 2 and 3, Tim, or 1 and 2? 1 and 2.
Class 1 and 2, yeah.
Abington's in 3. So
Abington's in 3. They're the only ones we have that's not in 1 and 2.
Right. And before I go to Danny, Tim, do you want to tell people where they can read your material and what you put out?
Yeah, you can go to heraldcourier.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. It's Hayes_BHC Sports.
BHC Sports. All right. And then we've got Danny Lewis. Danny writes for Virginia Preps, VA Preps, and he's out of Richmond, lives in Hanover. Danny, I know you're big on Twitter. We look at you on Facebook. Where can everybody find you if they want to get more of your information and content that you put out?
So obviously the website, virginiapreps.com, but I'm most active on social media, Twitter at CRF4Dan.
All right. Jay Gholson. Jay, you've never introduced yourself.
What do you mean?
Jay's from Potomac, Maryland. Or no. Jay's from Potomac High School, Woodbridge, 86 graduate. Went to Virginia Union. Jay is a great
guest. Voice.
He's an encyclopedia.
The voice of freedom.
The voice of the Freedom Woodbridge Eagles, which is the defending Class 6 champions. We've got the Godfather, Matt Hatfield. So anything we don't know, we know Matt can fill in.
Exactly.
Matt, I know you're going to plug your stuff. You got a great new podcast. Where can people find all of your material that you put out? Hatfield. He froze. Okay. Matt Case. Matt Case writes for the Roanoke Times. He's only been here for 4 weeks, coming from South Dakota, a little bit warmer. I've already read some of Matt's stuff. Matt comes after the old days. Bill Brill and Doug Dowdy. They were the encyclopedia of high school sports. Doug Dowdy's top 25 that came out on Christmas Day was the Bible. Matt, where can people find out about you?
Yeah, you can read our high school stuff at roanoke.com. You can find me on Twitter at Matt S. Case. That's Case.
All right. And then Matt Hatfield, you froze up a little bit. Where can we find you and all your stuff and your exciting new podcast?
Thanks. Sorry about that with the freeze up there. Internet you can never trust. But yeah, they can find us on virginiapreps.com. We're part of the Rivals Network, powered by Yahoo Sports. As my colleague Danny Lewis said, find me on Twitter at Hatfield Sports. A lot of social media content, new podcast, which is available on YouTube. Subscribe on the Virginia Beach Sportsplex website and YouTube channel, and cover things year round, wall to wall. So here, grind starting.
And I'm doing this because it is the case. I follow Matt's top 10 in every class for football and basketball. He's the modern day Doug Dowdy, right? He's got that going. I was just telling them about Doug Dowdy in the Roanoke Times, and used to do his top 25, and he used to do his notebook on Fridays and had all these little recruiting tidbits that nobody knew about. So check Matt out. And then we've got veteran of our show, Larry Rubama of the Virginian Pilot Daily Press. Larry, you be proud. I subscribed yesterday. I needed some pictures of Darling Stadium, and they got $1 out of me. So great to have you on, Larry. Larry grew up in the DC area, went to Our Lady of Good Counsel, went to Ohio University. He's a Bobcat. And anybody that goes to Ohio University will tell you real quick that they're the best school in Ohio. It's not Ohio State. Larry, where can we find you and the great content that you put out?
757teams.com, Daily Press, Virginia Pilot, and you can find me on Twitter at LH Rubama.
All right, great. All right, gentlemen. So we've done a little bit of planning, and Tim Hayes, you may be over about halfway, because you've got regions in 1 and 2, and just Abington in 3. What we're going to do is we're going to start at 1. So if you want to mark people watching that want to see Class 1, we're going to go over Class 1. Now, we've got a state Commonwealth of Virginia power, Riverheads, which is out of the Stanton area. That's the defending champion. And these are some schools that, are the smallest schools. And wanted to start off with you, Matt Hatfield. We were just talking about where some of these schools are. They go all around the state, and there's some good football. Riverheads is the defending champion. Grundy's been around for years. That's a wrestling powerhouse. Essex, that's on the Upper Peninsula above the Middle Peninsula. It's the Rappahannock and Potomac rivers. But let's start with Region A. So, Matt, Essex came out of that region, and there's some strong teams, King and Queen, Northumberland. I'm going by the seeds, West Point. West Point's had some great athletes. By the way, if Richmond and that is ever, there's a little cut through where you go down off at 95. You go through West Point, you hit on like New Kent County. Great lifelong Virginian here. But Matt, tell us a little bit, Hatfield, tell us a little bit about Class 1 Region A.
Well, Essex has been the dominant team in that region, guys. I mean, their veteran coach, Todd Jones, he's led them to 13 of their 18 double-digit win seasons they've had since 1993. But even though they're a program of tradition, you have a lot of them across the state, whether it's been Riverheads, who's moving up from Class 1 to Class 2, all these different schools we'll talk about in upper classifications. They bring back just 3 starters, 3 on defense, none on offense, and their starting quarterback will be a kid that played center last season, which is unheard of. So some drastic changes. They'll run some wing tee, some spread, but they've got a good system. They're well coached. They have a tough first game against Sussex Central, who's viewed as probably the favorite in Region 1B with about 17, 18 starters returning. I think it's a 4-team region race with Westmoreland, who's got a really good quarterback back, who's a 6'2" youngster that can sling it, and Jordan Tolson. Got a good 6'3" sophomore receiver, and Jalen Burrell, who's been offered by Charlotte. You don't get a lot of kids with Division I offers at the Class 2, Class 1 levels. Then I watch out for also 2 more scores. Northumberland, who lost its best player to Tennessee and Cam Selden, but they got some good offensive firepower back. And then West Point, which has back about 16, 18 starters. So I think Essex is still going to be there come playoff time, but they might have to take their lumps early and, have some growing pains. And it could even be that first game with the Sussex Central. I do feel like your state champion may come out of Region 1C or 1D, some of the teams that Tim is more familiar with on the southwest portion of the state, though I think you would begin with on the eastern portion, Sussex and Essex, part 1 coming up in the season opener, and possibly a part 2 in the state semifinals.
Yeah. Remember Reggie Gibbons that went to Penn State? Wasn't he Sussex Central? They've had some great athletes out of there through the years.
Sounds about right. That sounds about right.
But
But Essex lost 2 big studs to not Florida State, excuse me, UVA. Almost went to Florida State, and Cam Robinson, their big, versatile, both sides of the ball athlete, and their running back in Dorian Harris, who was a record setter now at Morgan State. So they've got to fill some guys and replace some holes that they lost.
Okay. So we get on to B, and we're talking the power of Riverheads. But you got some. Lunenburg is a program that's had one of the most winningest coaches. They've been good throughout the year. They're in there. Buffalo Gap, which is west of Stanton. Does anybody have a shot at Riverheads coming out of that Region B? Matt Hatfield?
Well, Riverheads is now in Class 2. They're in Class 2 Region
There
B.
we go.
Yeah. They moved
Okay.
up a division. There's going to be 3 new state champs this year because they're going from
Right.
Class 1 to Class 2. You got Phoebus going to Class 3 to Class 4, and then Highland Springs going from Class 5 to Class 6.
Right.
But as far as that 1B, I think Sussex is the team to beat. As for Riverheads, it won't be a picnic for them in 2B because you got some really good teams like Stewart's Draft, Clark County, Central Woodstock, who they play, by the way, in Game 1. So the schedule across the whole state, guys, and I think you all know this covering the state, it's front-loaded with some mega fascinating matchups, Week 1 and Week 2. And it's cool for us, but it might also present some playoff rematches and some games that you'd like to see later in the regular season come October, early November.
Okay. Woodstock's that exit between Winchester and Harrisonburg. It's also the Lambiot family is a big family in Virginia. Kenny Lambiot was early 80s, played quarterback for UVA, and William and Mary, great basketball player. But Walker Lambiot went to Central Woodstock, and he signed with NC State, ended up going to Northwestern. So moving on. Now we're getting into kind of down close to you, Tim Hayes, with Region C. And, you know, I look at these schools, and these schools have had, you know, some great players over the years. Galax, which is right down near Wytheville. And Jay showed his new Northern Virginia in this one time when he called it Galax. It's Galax. And the Bryson brothers from Virginia Tech. And some really good, you know, the Giles County, Grayson County, George Wythe, Narrows, Covington, Matt Hatfield. What can you tell us? And I also want to have Tim Hayes. I think some of those reach. I think you said that there was one that always played teams in your area. It was Galax because that's close. So you guys tell us about Region C in Class 1. Go ahead.
Tim has a better handle, but I'll set him up here. I mean, the thing I would tell you is George Wythe got to the state championship last year, got to replace some key guys, had the quarterback in tandem Smith back. Grayson County is a team I'm getting a lot of buzz from coaches. Narrows, though one of their stud receivers got hurt. They have another one back, though, that played AAU basketball, all-state kid in 2 sports, and Collier Pruitt. And then 1D, it feels like there's 3 or 4 schools. Rye Cove, Tim, was one of the best stories in the whole state, and Honaker seems to be getting a ton of attention with a lot of guys coming back.
Okay. That's good stuff. So who do you like coming out of Region C, Matt Hatfield?
I think it's probably between 4 teams: Galax, George Wythe, Grayson, and Narrows. And that could very well be the case in D, Tim, isn't it? Where you've got 3 or 4 teams that are kind of in the picture there.
Yeah, I think if you were looking at it right now, you would go Honaker, Patrick Henry, Rye Cove, and Holston still be pretty solid. I think they have 75% of their starting lineup back.
Wow.
It's kind of a strange thing in 1A now, because for years you could pencil in Riverheads and Galax in August, and now it's going to be a different feel this year. Who comes out of A, B, C, and D?
Right. Tim Hayes, do they get coverage? Do those teams down there in that region get any coverage outside of Bristol, Herald, Courier? Because Abingdon doesn't have a paper.
I would say they get covered pretty good because we have a couple TV stations, a couple daily newspapers. There's one in Kingsport, Tennessee.
Yep. Okay.
And some radios. I mean, they get pretty good coverage, and people love it. I mean, these schools, the whole town comes out to the game. I mean, the attendance is pretty impressive for Class 1 schools.
Yep. All right. So in Class 1, and you've got some of us that are quiet because we don't know that much, and that's where the guests come in, especially Matt Hatfield. But with Riverheads being gone, Matt Hatfield, who would you? I'm not asking you to pick who's going to win it, but who do you see in those state semifinals?
I think it's looking a lot like possibly Honaker if they get out of that region, which is no gimme because, as Tim mentioned, you've got Rye Cove, you've got Holston, who's been there before, just a couple seasons removed from a state berth. You've got Patrick Henry Gladespring, who's got one of the best linemen in the state, Tyler Barrett. I like their chances to get out of 1D. 1C, although Wythe and Galax are good. Galax, I think, can run the ball very well. Wythe can throw it. I'm liking the trajectory of Grayson County after what they did a season ago. So if you kind of put me on the spot, and I would not at all recommend anybody to put any shekels down on these things whatsoever, I would kind of lean with Grayson and Honaker right now. But it's as wide open as ever, to echo what Tim said, with Riverhead having won, almost 2 fingers full of state championships under Robert Casto, and then Ray Norcross, his longtime lieutenant who became the head coach, now in Class 2. It feels like some of those teams that didn't have a shot before now can be 1 or 2 plays away, 1 or 2 wins away come postseason time from being in the state championship game in December.
Jay Gholson.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, you mentioned Honaker. I mean, they have so many skill kids. I mean, Aiden Lowe, running back, he scored 8 touchdowns in a game last year.
8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 receiving, 4 rushing. Hard to do much better than that. And their quarterback, Peyton Music, is pretty good. And wide receiver Parker Bandy. So, I mean, they're going to score a lot of points this year.
Yeah. Jay, I was going to quiz you on a big-time player from Honaker.
Okay.
Heath Miller, Swords Creek, which is basically right outside of it. Great player. Tech usually gets those kids. UVA did a good job getting him. All right, so let's move on to Class 2. And Larry Rubama, we actually have some 757 teams. So, and then Tim Hayes also with the Bristol Herald Courier has pretty much the whole region, the Region D down there. Why don't we start down there, do a little bit of different order. Now, Tim, that is great football. Graham, that big lineman, Brody, is going to Virginia Tech, 6'7", 6'8" kid. And then we talked about Central Wise. Help me out. Central Wise is Appalachia and Powell Valley?
No, Wise Central is Pound and J.J. Kelly.
Got it. And then
Union
Right.
is Powell Valley and Appalachia.
Right. Okay. And then Gate City's had great players. I don't know if any's more popular than the basketball player, Mac McClung, but Chad Beasley, Jake Housewright, the whole crew of those people. Virginia High Classic out of Bristol. Tim, you're front and center. These are all schools that you cover and you know the people there. Tell us about some of those teams in Region D, Class 2.
To be fair, the sentiment among most is everybody's playing for second this year with Graham when it comes to Region 2D. I mean, the G-men have won 30 straight regular season games. They're the state champions. Tydrez Clements, senior running back, he's unreal. In the region finals last year against Ridgeview, they lined him up in the Wildcat, and he rushed for 409 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's back. You got Sean Hughes is a stud at defensive end. Special teams, they're good. I know Dylan Nash, their kicker, he can really kick it. So, I mean, they're loaded. And like I said, the sentiment is everybody else down this way is playing for second.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting take. Matt Hatfield, who played for the New York Giants and went to Graham High School.
You're thinking of Ahmad Bradshaw?
That's it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So
That's had a relative on a team, as Tim knows, that played there and is now playing college ball, right, Tim?
Oh, yeah. Cam
Who was
Allen.
that again?
A bunch of guys.
Who was that, Hatfield? Who'd you say?
Was it his nephew played Xavion Turner Bradshaw? Tim?
That's his son, actually. He's at
Son,
Tech.
excuse me, yeah.
And they have the starting safety at Purdue. Cam Allen is from Graham as well. So, yeah, they produced a lot of good players. Tony Palmer, since he took over, he's 86-16 in 8 years on the job. So
Wow.
So moving up to Region C. Again, these are great programs also. Radford's always been tough. That was Frank Beamer's first job out of college was at Radford High School. But you've got some great teams. Appomattox has had some good teams. Sean Moore went to Martinsville. Glenvar had some great players. Matt Case, you've been here 4 weeks. You got indoctrinated enough about this region, because this is most of this is within the Roanoke Times coverage area.
Yeah, well, I know that Radford's got a heck of a quarterback in Landon Clark.
Okay.
He had, nearly 3,000 passing yards last year. He had 44 touchdowns against just 1 interception. He had more interceptions on defense as a safety than he did on offense as a quarterback. He's getting looks from some D1 schools, Old Dominion, Maine, So I think those offers could probably get even better if he has got another solid season. And then I know that Glenver is also pretty solid too. They got a pretty good quarterback too, and Brady Doyat, he led them to the region final last year, and he's only going to be a sophomore.
So, Matt Case, you know enough to pick somebody coming out of that region?
Can't say that I know enough, but I know that's just looking at that last year that, Radford was, they're looking good with Clark, and last year they lost to Appomattox County by 5 points, and then they faced Glenvar, and Glenvar won again. Glenvar lost by 4 points. So just from our coverage area, those would be two teams that we would be looking at for sure with those signal colors coming back.
Okay. I believe Glenvar was Brandon Simonis, who played linebacker for Tech in the 95 Sugar Bowl, and I believe the 96 Orange Bowl. So moving over to Region B, now that's a lot of west of Northern Virginia going down to Harrisonburg, and there's some good programs there. Tom Cooper, who played for Virginia Tech, Chad Cooper, his son, he went to Stewart's draft. Clark County's always been good. That's the county between here and Winchester. But we got to go to Matt Hatfield. Who do you like coming out of here, Matt? And we know Central Woodstock is a program.
Yeah, I think you start with them. They bring back a good chunk of their team that made it to the state playoffs and pretty much, got to the bridesmaid, if you will, of Graham, who is, I agree completely with Tim. They're the hands down favorite. As many covering sports for Beat Online newspapers, when you get one of the prohibited coaches or defending state champs coaches who sends his survey in early as preseason form, like a month or not even within a month of you requesting it, they're going to be good when he fills it out completely like Coach Palmer did. But as far as 2B, I like what Central Woodstock is building, bringing back their top tackler and Nathan Lopez. He had 180 stops, 12 sacks a season ago, got their top rusher, 1,200-yard back, and Taylor Forbes returning. I do think they'll get pushed right out of the gate in game one. Riverheads, who's won, a slew of state championships, they could start 0-1. Either one of those two teams could, and they could run into each other in the regional final. And then you've got Buckingham's a sleeper. Stuart's draft, despite just 5 seniors, can make some noise. I think the 4 and 5 seeds, even in this region, if you take a Strasburg, could be right there. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the team that loses this opener of Central Woodstock Riverheads was to win it in a rematch should they square off in the regional semis or regional championship. So I'm curious to see how Riverheads does adapting from Class 1 to Class 2. But when you got a back as good as Caden Cook Cash returning, they're a pretty safe choice. So I think you can go either way, 1A, 1B with the Riverheads or Central Woodstock.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just going to say, so Riverhead's going to be coming out of here. All right, We got Riverheads. Jay, you drive to Charlottesville much?
No.
Oh, okay. Just so everybody knows, if you're going down 29, Madison County is known for one thing. They pull you over and give you a ticket. I think that's how they fund everything down there. So when you go to state championships for 5 and 6, the Virginia people, slow down in Madison County because they are waiting for you. Now, Larry Rubama, don't be Rip Van Winkle. Wake up. Good to have you, Larry. So we're getting down where we got some teams.
Yeah, it's been a long day. I don't know if you heard Grant Holloway won another world championship, so been busy all day covering that and doing our football rankings. But yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
I'm glad you're here. But we're talking some Eastern Shore teams. You've got Pocosin, Bruton, great program. Brian Randall and King William was big coming out of there last year. Matt, what do you think for this Region A? And by the way, I don't want to. Riverheads went from 1 to 2. I want to make sure I don't miss any more moves. But this came down to Pocosin going to the state semifinals. What do you see coming out of here, Matt Hatfield? I want to get your feedback also, Larry. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Larry's colleague a week or two ago, Marty O'Brien. I know he does picks with Larry like I do with Coach Young on my podcast and used to be radio. So we always match wits and try to see what we can do to see we get edges on our little prediction battles, if you will. But and speaking with Marty and also catching up with Elliot Duty, the coach of Pocosin, I feel like they have a lot back. They got 4 or 5 senior linemen. can run the ball with Chase Bullard, Baker Green. Got a quarterback who's a multi-sport kid returning an Eli Tyndall. I think Pocosin is set up well. They did very well in their scrimmage. King William's going to play a bear of a schedule. King William might play the toughest schedule of any Class 2, Class 1 school in the state the first 5-6 games. And I hesitated about ranking them because their record could look bad midway through the season, but we did put them in our Class 2 top 10, and they could certainly run into Pocosin for the Region 2A finals. And if you're looking for a sneaky team that comes out of nowhere that wasn't ranked, guys, watch out for Nottoway. They have a freshman quarterback who's got a chance to be very good. And if he ends up developing to the level that their coaching staff is expecting, Nottoway could be a real player. They sent a kid to an SEC school a couple years ago down to Ole Miss, and they like their team a whole lot. So they're a team to circle as maybe a surprise there. And one team did move up of note. Central Lunenburg had a good year. They were in Class 1. They're now in Class 2 Region A. So I think it's a 2-team race to begin with Pocosin, King William, but the dark horse is Nottoway.
Nottoway's down there off of 85, isn't it, going towards South Hill?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Near
And then,
Lawrence.
that's interesting about Pocosin. I think Tyndall went to Bethel High School, or his father went to Bethel High School, if I remember right. Isn't he the baseball coach?
Yes, he's a very good baseball player. Very good baseball player. Humble kid too. Real humble kid.
Yeah, and I think he's got a brother also. They're his parents, I believe, are from Hampton. So, and that's good to see. But Pocosin, a long time ago, they've turned into a powerhouse. I mean, they're very consistently good, but they were like Phoebus in the very beginning, just lost every year. So, so this one is getting interesting. Now Hatfield, I want to make sure I didn't get this wrong. Is there anybody from 2 going up to 3?
From 2 going up to 3, that's a great question. Yes, Thomas Jefferson of Richmond, I believe, is 1. They're now in 3B. Just scanning the list of teams. I think that's about it. Could be missing somebody, but if I come back to one later, I'll be sure to let you know because there's a lot of changes going up and down across the board.
Right. Now, could we be looking at a Riverheads Graham? That would be a classic final.
Yes.
Downstate.
Storylines galore. Yes.
Yeah.
Tim will never run out of writing features for that one before the state championship if we do get that, to see if that streak could stop and how they match up with Graham. But I'll be honest with you, Tim, and you can chime in. I think Graham is pretty head and shoulders the favorite for this.
Yeah, I think everybody here wants to see Graham versus Riverheads. There are no bones about it. And heck, I'd like to see that when you get Caden Cook Cash and Tydrez Clements. That'd be quite a showdown.
So, Tim, you've only got Tim Hayes. You've got one more team, and that's Abington that's in Class 3.
Yeah, they struggled a little bit last year, but they have a lot of seniors coming back. So, I mean, they'll be in the 3D playoffs, maybe get a home game. So they'll be pretty solid.
Right. Before we start on 3, I want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you because the 276 people might drop off at this point. Where can everybody find you on social media and get your content again?
You can read my stuff at heraldcourier.com, and I'm on Twitter at Hayes_BHC Sports. And I also wanted to mention one more team in Class 1, Thomas Walker. They might be a surprise team, kind of like Rycove was last year. And I wanted to point out they have an offensive lineman, 3-year starter named Matthew Hatfield. So, if your name's Matthew Hatfield, you're pretty talented. So there you go.
It's the best lineman in the state right there, no doubt.
He might be in the top 10 now.
Huh? All right. Move him up.
Yeah, and I wanted to plug in that if anybody from Wise County is listening, my mom grew up in Wise. My grandparents are from Wise and Gley Morgan, and I spent like the summers of 75, 76, and 77 in Wise. That is a wonderful place. I've still got family there. My mom's a Wampler. That's a very big name down there, and love going down there. The people are so nice, and they've got some unbelievable football players, don't they, Tim Hayes? Thomas and Julius Jones, James, who's the kid that just played for Tech? Help me
James
out here.
Mitchell.
James Mitchell, the great Carroll Dale. So that's a wonderful place in the state that's got a piece of my heart. So, all right, so let's move up to 3. So we're going to go to Class 3. And for those watching, we're at about the 29-minute mark. All right, so Class 3 gets interesting all over the state. Larry Rubama, you're really going to get involved here because this is 757 heavy. And let's start, Larry, with that Region A. They're loving life because Phoebus is going to 4. That's going to
Yeah.
be a great conversation coming up. And then you've got, is Lake Taylor still in there, Larry?
Mhm. Yeah, there's still 3. Yep, they're Class 3 Region A.
All right. So you've got some great teams. Tim
Yeah.
Hayes and I were talking. Lake Taylor used to be, I think, on the upper end of AAA back in the day, and Lafayette is Lawrence Taylor's high school. That's a great program. With Phoebus leaving Larry and Matt Hatfield, is it going to come down to like Lake Taylor and Lafayette?
But that's the 2 teams that I was looking at already, you know, with especially with Lafayette. I mean, you know, with the quarterback Hayden Oleski, I think he's thrown for over 1,500 yards. Then they got Nazir. I'm probably messing all their names up. Walmart and James Spencer. I mean, and then Eli Matthews. These are some of the guys that I've been seeing that coach put on his preview for him. I mean, their team that I think is definitely, Matt can definitely tell you because he knows everything. I always point to him. He knows a whole so lot, but I see them as the team to beat, definitely in the Bay Rivers. And then when you look over with Lake Taylor, you know, this has been a hard offseason for Hank Sawyer. He's had the death of his mother, death of an assistant coach. Then there was another person who was real close to the program, who have all passed. And you know, and just talking to him, I know it's been rough. He is the elder statesman in Southampton Roads, but this is probably going to be one of the toughest seasons he's had. The one thing I think is that you know, they lost assistant coach named Coach Ford, who was really big in their program. But I think what can probably happen is these guys can kind of rally around and try to do this for Hank and for those, you know, who have passed. And I think, you know, it starts with, you know, Elijah Moss Washington, the Syracuse commit, who can do so many different things. We talked about being dual sports. He's also all Tidewater and basketball. 6'7" kid who can go get the ball but can also play linebacker. And then they also got the quarterback who's been back, Jameer Spotty Freeman, threw for over 1,700 yards and 23 touchdowns, also rushed for more than 500, who's big for them. And then on the line, you know, he's got several linemen coming back, but the one that you can't miss is Keontae Arrington, 6'8", 355 pounds.
Wow.
And when you go to a practice, you see him and you see Elijah, they stick out. And so I think, you know, I really believe that these guys are going to rally behind and really try to do this for Hank. I really do. Just talking to Hank and talking to the players. When one of their assistant coach passed away, they took a whole bus over there and to be at the funeral, and they were all dressed. And you could just see, you know, all that plays in their minds. They know what Hank means to them and how much he supported that program. And then with Hank's mom passing, her funeral is coming up on Wednesday. You know, I feel, just talking with him, I know he's going through a lot, and I just feel that these players are going to rally around and really try to do it for him. But yeah, definitely keep him in your prayers. He's going through a lot the last several months. But I really think that they're going to rally behind it and really try to do some things. I forgot the other guy. They got a running back, Matt, I forgot his name. Marquise Drew Rogers. I mean, he's rushed for over nearly 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns as a junior. I think he's gonna be good. And then, you know, Hank always finds some other players that he throws in there that you never heard about, and then they come in there and doing some things. So I really like Lake Taylor this year, with everything that they're going through. I like them a lot.
Danny Lewis, you two chime in. What you cover Hopewell, don't you know a little bit about Hopewell? They got Henderson's younger brother, the Ohio State running back. How's Hopewell going to be in that region, Danny?
Hard to say. I think they could be good. I know Matt Hatfield thinks a little bit more of them than I do. I'm a little bullish. They've got to replace some pieces, particularly quarterback. But Keshawn Henderson is a solid running back. He's no Trevion, but he holds his own. They would be the 3A team from Richmond that I guess would be the one that maybe butt heads with the 757. I wouldn't sleep on Colonial Heights, but they're still kind of the new kids on the block as far as kind of resurrecting that program.
Right. And Keyshawn Henderson's one of the few players that's not committed yet. Almost everybody commits by now. You know, these classes are good to go. 2024 is pretty much good to go. Is Ohio State looking at him, Danny? Do we know?
Not that I'm aware of. He's probably the thing holding up his recruiting is he hasn't had a full season where he's been completely healthy.
Right.
So, you know, he misses a game here or there during the season, and it kind of skews his numbers, but when he's on the field, he's definitely a playmaker.
Okay. Moving down to B, this region stretches. And then, Brentsville District is up here. That's a team that's in Nokesville. They're 3, and then they've got right down the road a Class 6 team. They've always been on the cusp, but they've ran into Phoebus every year, and Phoebus is gone. So Coach Lauren White and everybody over at Brentsville, great athletic family over there, this might be their year. But Matt Hatfield, we know Skyline and Warren. We'll let you go, Jay. So before you talk about Matt, I know you know the Skyline in the Warren County, which is that 66 corridor going towards 81. But Jay Gholson, tell us about Brentsville. We got a lot of followers. All you Brentsville people, make sure to subscribe to us. Jay, go ahead.
I will say this: they have 3 3-year starters coming back. The quarterback, the linebacker Langston White, who's coach's son, is Lauren's son, going to William and Mary, and the quarterback Tom Alexander, and running back, I think Rico Lloyd, running back. I saw a scrimmage against 2 6A teams, against Gainesville, the 6B teams. I'm sorry, 6B, Gainesville, Osborne, and they beat them bad. I know it's only a scrimmage, but Brentsville this year will definitely be, based on what I've seen so far in the scrimmages, will be in the Final 4.
All right.
Yeah.
Who else though? We know that Skyline and Warren counties are good.
Also, Kettle Run is good. They dropped from 4 to 3.
So, that's a good one, Jay. So okay. So Kettle Run will be. I know a little bit, but they're losing the premier playmaker and Jordan Tapscott, who flipped from VMI to Tech. I know you know about that, Matt Hatfield. But they also had a quarterback that was almost like that ran it and punished people. But they've got a great tradition out there. I've been out there. It's just on the cusp of Prince William County. Their coach agreed to come on, but we ran out of runway coach to get all the coaches on. So that's a good one. So yeah, Kettle Run. Everybody at Kettle Run, make sure you follow us because we've talked quite a bit about your team. All right, Matt Hatfield. What about those other teams? I'm glad you brought up Kettle Run, Jay. What about Skyline and Warren County, and you got Culpeper County also?
Yeah, I just think they're a couple notches below the 2 favorites there in Brentsville and in Kettle Run. And by the way, and Jay probably knows this, they play each other regular season finale. It's a big rivalry game. So it could be like we talked about some of these early front-loaded games, chapter 1 of a chapter 2. They could run into each other again in the Region 3B final. I'm with Jay. I think with White and with the quarterback returning, Caleb, I think they just had the edge because Kettle Run lost those standouts and Abram Chumley at quarterback, Jordan Tapscott, who was as prolific as a receiver in the state last year, regardless of classification. They do bring back the 1,000-yard rusher and Colton Quaker, who might run for 2,000 this year. He'll have some quakes to the end zone, but I feel like Brentsville's got a little more in the tank to get them. I do think it's going to be a very good game, but the rest of those teams just aren't at that level. One that could be sneaky because they've got tradition and they're well coached is Goochland. Alex Fruth has a good program, a lot of returnees. So if you're looking for a team that could kind of be that fly in the ointment, it would be Goochland. And to go back real quickly on the 3A point, Larry nailed it on Lake Taylor. Sentimental choice. A lot of people, sending our best to Hank Sawyer and his group with the loss of his mom and Coach Ford, who was such an awesome guy to be around. And I think they're the favorite with Lafayette right behind them. Hopewell could be sneaky, but as you guys all know, the seedings could make it where we don't get a Lake Taylor Lafayette 1-2 region championship. They have to play each other in semifinals. That could open the door for like a Hopewell, a Norcom, who did well in a scrimmage recently with Western Branch, somebody that kind of comes out of left field that we're not expecting because those teams play such challenging schedules and they're out of district. In the case of, say, a Lake Taylor, a Hopewell, and some others, that the records might not be your 10-0, 9-1. Oh, by the way, Lake Taylor's got a New Jersey opponent and more on the schedule in the first month.
Wow.
So a region semifinal could actually be the 2 best teams, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, could happen.
All right. So we are getting back to the Timesland, Roanoke Times, when we go to Region D. Got some Roanoke area schools. Christiansburg, made it all the way to they faced Heritage. Heritage knocked them off, but you've got some Lord Botetourt and Bassett, Maurice DeShazo's school. Matt Park, I know some of these schools fall in your area, Magna Vista. What can you tell us about the Region D, Matt Park?
Well, I think that Christiansburg and Lord Botetourt are going to be those 2 teams again. They faced off in the region title game last year. Christiansburg has just been kind of on the up and up since Alex Wilkins took over, and last year's region title was kind of a new milestone for him. And I think they're going to be just as good this year.
Right.
They got their quarterback, Tanner Evans, back, small guy, but he's super athletic. He was district player of the year. They got a two-way player on the line in Carter Stollard, who's 6'8", 310 pounds. He's heading into his junior year already with offers from Duke, Maryland, and more to come, I'm sure.
Right.
They graduated a really, really solid running back in Curtis Altizer, so that's going to be a position that they're looking to fill. But I think they're going to be right back in there in the region finals. And then you look at Lord Botetourt, and they got 3 linemen who are really going to push the running game. And DJ Tolliver, who he's uncommitted. He's got some offers from Duke, Louisville. Got Kendall Howard, who's going to Wake Forest, and you got Keyshawn Anderson, who's going to Ohio. So you got 3 big guys right there who are definitely going to be part of a really strong team. They got their quarterback back in Jakari Nicely, and they got their top receiver in Cade Lang back. So I think they're going to be, both of those teams are going to be just as good, if not better, than they were last year. And that region final could be those 2 teams again.
Yeah. That Stallard kid is starting to get a lot of eyes on him for next year, senior. And Stallard is a big name in Southwest Virginia. But Tolliver for Botetourt, his dad played for UVA, and I believe his dad is an assistant coach, and I think their head guy may be a UVA guy. Matt, what do you think about that? What Matt Hatfield, what Matt Park said, with Lord Botetourt and Christiansburg. I kind of concur with that.
Yeah, I think those are 2 of the definite favorites for sure. I mean, they're well coached, they're disciplined, they have linemen, and that matters in high school football. One team that I think that's going to sneak up on a lot of people, and I'm interested to see if it becomes about strength or speed, so, the brawn versus finesse, if you will, is Magna Vista. I know they got knocked out early last year. They played Stanton River, who beat them game 1, but Joe Favero is a 2-time state champion coach and brings back 18 starters, 9 on each side of the ball, including a 1,000-yard back, actually a 1,500-yard back in J.J. Spriggs, and also his quarterback in Simeon Moore, and he's very high on his team. He's not a guy that usually oversells on his team. So if there's a team that, and injuries are such a big deal. Botetourt's been snake bit by some injuries in some recent runs under coach Jamie Harless. Christiansburg has stayed pretty healthy. Magna Vista had some injuries a couple years ago after I think it was their second of back-to-back state titles. So the injury bug is going to play a factor in that 3D race, but I do think it's actually a 3-team race to me, where I would throw in there Magna Vista to go with Botetourt and Christiansburg, and whoever's got the most healthy bodies, because depth is going to play a big factor in Class 3 across the board. When you throw in the 3A, 3B, 3C, that might be the determining factor come November.
Yeah. And that's, those are some great programs, by the way, in that Region D. Cave Spring with the Barber brothers, Bassett's, Maurice DeShazo. Christiansburg has some great athletes. Magna Vista's had some great football players. I can't think off the top of my head, but they've had some big guys go to UVA and Tech. But so the one that's left, Matt Park, you might help me out. Back when I was in school at Virginia Tech, the Roanoke Times did cover Lynchburg. Do they still cover Lynchburg?
Here and there.
Right.
We got a few teams over there that we will cover from time to time.
Right. Because this is kind of the Lynchburg region. Is you've got EC Glass in Class 4. Matt Hatfield, Liberty Christian always seems to be at the top here, but Heritage made it to the state finals and met Phoebus. I saw Heritage play. How's this region looking? Is Liberty Christian aligned to do well again? I have not been able to check them out.
Yes, they have a running back who's a beast. He's a grown man, Gideon Davidson, who's committed to Clemson. He is hard to bring down. He'll run for 200 and he'll run you over. And he's a grown man. Now, Liberty Christian's roster, guys, it's similar to Lake Taylor. It only has about 30 to 35 players. So if they lose 1 or 2 key starters among their main guys, it's going to seriously hamper them. And that's what happened last year in the playoffs. Davidson went down and it opened the door for Heritage of Lynchburg, who's really well coached, physical, hard-nosed group under Brad Bradley. People know the Bradley football family across the state. Burhead Bradley, successful coach who won state championship. So I think it's a 3-team race there with Liberty Christian, Heritage of Lynchburg, and Brookville. That Seminole district is extremely good. It's one of the best in the whole state. Brookville lost some key guys from their group, but I think they're going to be fine with Micah Penix leading the way at defensive end. And Heritage doesn't have that marquee level guy, but they have a lot of good players, especially underclassmen there. There's a couple of teams that could make some noise throughout the year. I think Turner Ashby's got a lot of pieces back. They could have a nice 8-9 win type of year potentially. But to me, if you get out of that Seminole and the records might not be 9-1, 10-0, they're going to be prepped for the playoffs. So whoever gets out of that 3 seed is going to feel like they can win the state championship, especially now that Phoebus is no longer that team in the way come state final time in December, and Heritage did beat them from one of their state championships. So that's also something that a lot of those kids weren't a part of, but they remember.
Okay. So I'm going to say Lake Taylor and Heritage. Going to go with Brentsville and Christiansburg. I'm going to pick Brentsville to face Liberty Christian. And I like Brentsville winning their first Class 3. Great sports school. I think they're due, Jay. They got good athletes, and they get the benefits. And Matt, you know this too, Hatfield. They're right on the edge of all the population. So it's almost like, they're a Nova. They are a Nova team, but there's a lot of people moving around. There's a lot of ties with Prince William County and Loudoun County out there. So yeah, Brentsville, I'm picking you. Phoebus is gone. And speaking of that, let's go to 4. And Danny Lewis has got a lot to say here. Dinwiddie lost their opener to a national power the other night. We know Dinwiddie's going to be good, but this may be the most interesting class out of all 6. They're really good. But let's start with that region down there, which is going to be unbelievably tough. You've got Danny. You've got Dinwiddie, Hanover, King George, and Varina, all in the same. Can anybody beat Dinwiddie? Does King George have a shot? Danny and Matt Hatfield. Danny, go ahead.
Haven't seen King George last year. I know they pieces change all the time, but they've got 2 big time receivers. Yes, if that game last year, the region final went to overtime.
Yep.
That was a thriller, memorable game. I wasn't there, but my partner was, and King George almost got him then. So can they beat Dinwiddie? Absolutely. But I think this region comes down one of Dinwiddie, Varina, or King George.
Right.
Varina, looking at Varina, they remind me a little bit of the makeup of that 2021 team that won it all. A lot of experience and just putting in some pieces, mainly quarterback.
Mm-hmm. This is a college recruiter's dream, this region. Matt, what's your take on that region with all those good teams?
Yeah, I'm like Danny. Our colleague Byron Jones got to see the great game last year. We're jealous we didn't get that good of a game with Dinwiddie King George. It was a score fest. The games I get tend to be blowouts, running clock. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to seeing Varina this Friday against Indian River. And then, by the way, Varina plays host to Freedom of Woodbridge next Thursday. So they have 2 monster games out of the gate, a 7-5-7 team, a Prince William team, both well established and well known. I saw Varina in 7-on-7 at Old Dominion in the summertime. Had a lot of players that the ODU coaches were watching closely. Dysere Carter, a young kid who's going to break out for them, is a really impressive athlete. Quarterback's going to be key. Can they manufacture enough offense? King George has the 2 flashy stud receivers in Makai White and Chance Wiggins, who are headed to Maryland and Virginia Tech, respectively. Breaking in a new quarterback who transferred in, very good. But if you're going to beat Dinwiddie, you have to outscore them, which King George was unable to do, or you better have a lockdown defense, which Phoebus has. So maybe it's not until the state semis that somebody can slow down that up-tempo screen attack that Billy Mills has with Harry Dalton leading it. So you have to have one or the other, be able to outscore them or have a lockdown defense. And there's not many teams that will have that recipe. You got to have a lot of things go right to beat them, or you just have more athletes than them, which not many teams do.
Yeah. Danny, I think for Varina, how they do against Freedom Woodbridge, because that's a loaded football team, and they're very well coached too. They're not just individual talents. That's a very good team. My team.
No, I
My
saw
pick.
Freedom. I saw Freedom last year in the state finals. They are everything that you hear about, and in fact, I'm planning on covering that Verona Freedom game. So
Mhm.
really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if Verina's going to have a role in that region, I'm going to pick Dinwiddie to come out of there, Coach Billy Mills. But I think how Verina does against Freedom is going to be big. And so, Larry, I know it's been a long day, but we got a really strong region in Region A. Phoebus is moving up. Warwick got to the state semifinals last year. Kings Fork is moving out.
Mhm.
They're going to be in the region with Maury in 5. Can anybody compete with Phoebus and Warwick, Larry Rubama?
I mean, Phoebus, is like they got some good transfers. They're just reloading. And when you have a program like that like Oscar Smith, and you got to beat them and you got to punch them in the mouth to see if you can beat them. And they just got strong. I look at when I was looking at the preview that Marty did. I mean, they got Anthony Riddick, the guy that's going. He hit 21 sacks last year. He's going to Maryland. Tayshawn Stevenson, I believe he's going to ODU.
He's a beast.
Right, and you got, I mean, and then they just got Caleb Tillery in 95 tackles. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. They lose a quarterback by Nolan James, but they got somebody else coming in. And David Applewhite transferred over, a big 6'4", 300-pound lineman transferred in from Woodside. They got another lineman, Emery Durso.
Durso.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just loaded. And then, how can you forget? I forgot they got the running back, Paul Stephen Davis from Woodside. So when you have those guys, they're coming to that school for a reason. They're coming to that school for a reason. They're not coming there just to compete. They're coming there to be able to win. And I know I heard their coach, Blunt, talking earlier this week when they played somebody in the scrimmage. Maury. They played Maury,
yeah.
and he said, now these guys want to prove that they can win as well. There's nothing like that. When you put that on a team to say, okay, what you gonna do? You see what we did before. We don't even want to talk about last year. What you gonna do now? That's it. And they want to get a piece of that as well. They want to ring the leave when they leave as well. So I mean, just Phoebus they're just loaded. They're going to be another strong team once again. So it's gonna be interesting. I mean, it's gonna be real interesting. But you can't. War Hill's also got a lot of talent. I mean, they got several guys. They got a kid, Taylor Edie, who's going to North Dakota State. Who when I was doing my top 50 players, he was one that stuck out, as well as the young man Liam Francisque. Is that how you say, Matt?
Quarterback, isn't he?
He can do everything. Yeah,
I'm thinking about Eduardo Rios. It's really good, also.
And so that they're going to be tough too. But when your team like Phoebus, what are you going to do? You got to punch them in the mouth and prove you can beat them. And until you do that, they're still going to be the team to beat.
Right. I don't know much about War Hill. That's a newer high school. Matt Hatfield. What about War Hill? And they're in Williamsburg.
Right. And that's what Larry was talking about, because Warwick is actually moving up to 5B.
Right. That's what I thought. Yeah.
I didn't know Warwick's moving up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in
going to be
5B now. They're in that loaded region. Also, Nansman is pretty good in that region too. But War Hill, he nailed it with Francisque and Taylor Edie, Jaden McAdoo at running back. I think they're probably the team. That's my big debate is Phoebus head and shoulders. They're the team in this region. Who's going to be the runner-up? It might be War Hill because they get a good seed.
Right.
It could be Churchland. Don Leonard's got a good program. He's got to replace Brandon Hillman, who's now at Michigan, was the dual threat quarterback for them. So that's going to be the compelling thing to see how the styles come semifinal time, second round of the playoffs, how they'll mesh if you get like a Churchland War Hill. But this is Phoebus's region, I think, in a breeze. And I'd say they're as big a favorite as any team in Class 4 across the board to win its region, even though I think you might on the western part of the state, and I'm sure Matt Case will jump in about this, people out west love Salem's team with a lot of speed, led by two dynamic studs in Chris Cole and the Tennessee commit in Peyton Lewis. But that could be a dream matchup in Class 4 should we get to state championship time and we get that and say a Dinwiddie or somebody else out of 4B, 4C doesn't get us or prevents us from having that matchup, if you will.
Yep. So I did not know. I can't keep up with the moves. I wish I didn't have time to prep. But Warwick going to 5, and they're going to be in the Maury region with Kings Fork, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Wow, what a loaded region. I'll say this about Phoebus. They're a lot coming back. The whole offensive line, then the transfer. I've heard unbelievable things about the tailback and the quarterback, and Keontae Gray's a great player that we didn't mention, and Caleb Tillery. So if they play together as a cohesive unit, they've got a great shot of winning their third straight championship, but it's going to be different this year. I mean, I know that they've gotten the swagger back. They've won 2 in a row, but you're going to have to go through Dinwiddie. And you're going to have to probably face, a Salem or EC Glass team. And then, coming out of Region C, which we'll jump to next, there's going to be some interesting teams there because somebody moved up. And like I said, I can't keep up with that. But, Coach Blunt and the assistants, they've got it going. Of course, I'm going to pick Phoebus to win the state championship. But Dinwiddie, that's going to be a tough out. So if the PowerPoints, that may be it, Danny Lewis and Matt Hatfield, where they play. So that semifinal game, if it's at Darling Stadium or if it's at Dinwiddie, that could be that would be a great game. And I'm going to go to either game, but I'm going to pick Phoebus out of that side. And having said that, let's go back. And, Matt Park, a great Salem team. Let's start with that Salem team. They got a running back that's going to Tennessee. Did the linebacker, is he committed to Georgia yet?
No, he hasn't announced his commitment yet. He's going to announce in September. He's going to make a whole event out of it. But in the last couple of weeks, he's narrowed down his list. Georgia's still on there. Southern Cal, Virginia Tech, Penn State, I think, is still on there. So he's getting ready to make his announcement.
Nothing like Blacksburg, I'll tell you that. But I mean, those are all great schools. So Matt Hatfield, this is interesting because EC Glass is a team that's got unbelievable athletes. If you go through the history of who's played at EC Glass, and they've had a coaching change recently, and then Matt, Louisa County, I believe they've lost quite a bit. But who do you like? I'm gonna go with Salem out of there. Who do you like, Matt Hatfield?
Well, quick on Louisa, they're in our school that made a move up. They went from 4D to 5C.
Okay.
But I like Salem in this region. I do think EC Glass can push them, even though they had the coaching change. Jamar Lovelace, I think long-term is going to do really good things there. Came from William Fleming, got them to the state semis a few years ago. They got to replace their quarterback at Glass, but they bring back Michael Thomas, their running back, and about 7 or 8 other offensive starters to be versatile enough. And the defense is going to be pretty stout. And they play in that tough Seminole district with the Heritage of Lynchburg, Liberty Christian, Brookville, about 3 other state caliber teams, as far as state playoff caliber teams, that I think will get them prepped and ready. So I think it's going to be the storyline that Matt and I will be following throughout the year. A lot of people around the state too, is the revenge factor, because that was a team that stood in the way last year of EC Glass with Salem. They conquered that. Now Salem wants to get revenge for them come playoff time. And I think that's been the mindset for those veterans like Lewis and Cole. And I think if you have the better upperclassmen in a game that looks kind of even, if you will, you probably give the nod to the Spartans there, who have a lot of speed from that track team that set a lot of records and won a lot of awards. So I'd give them the nod, but I think it'll be a very good game if we get it.
I'm having a brain cramp. Who was the coach with all the wins? Was that Willis Wade for Salem? Matt.
Back in the day. Yeah, back in the day, yeah.
He's
also Stephen Magenbauer won championships before Don Holter, his longtime assistant, took over.
Right. Okay. And then coming up to Region C, which is Loudoun and basically Winchester, Frederick County. Matt, I saw that you had Tuscarora ranked number 10, and I didn't get the rest of your top 10, but County lost quite a bit, and then Millbrook upset Tuscarora, and then of course Sharanda is always tough. But who do you like coming out of here now that Kettle Run is gone?
I think Tuscarora could be there when it's all said and done, but the team I'm kind of leaning with, because I think they've been trending upward, is John Champ. And remember, John Champ has played in all different classifications the last few years. As I'm sure Jay knows this, they were once in Class 3. They've been in Class 6 and Class 5. Yep. They have a pretty dynamic receiving duo that I think is going to make a lot of noise for them. And I think it's going to be the problem for some of the defenses to defend. I like what Lee Carter's got there. And they got a young man who's already committed in Greg Spiller, who's a very good athlete, to Delaware. So I give them the nod over Tuscarora, but obviously Tuscarora has the massive offensive lineman headed to Florida and Fletcher Westfall. I think this is a region where you're going to have an upset or two, possibly in the first round. We saw it last year, as you mentioned, where Tuscarora was a 2 seed and got knocked off by a 7 seed in Millbrook. So this is where you could see somebody. I wouldn't even discount now a Woodgrove who's dropped down to 4 seed as a team that could make some noise if they have a couple new position starters on offense step up for Derek Barlow. Remember, a few years ago, they beat Lake Taylor in a state championship at Liberty. Yeah,
Right.
and I know Javon Harvey went down that game for Lake Taylor, who sort of minimized them on the outside, but they did a great job of throwing the ball, moving it. They've got some skill position guys, and they play a lot of good teams up there. So they're another team to watch out for that could be sneaky. So there's this one's more wide open than I'd say there's a hands down favorite. I give the slight nod if I was to kind of give percentages, maybe 40% to Champ, 35% to Tuskegee, and 25% to Woodgrove, something like that. If I cut the pie.
That's an all Loudoun County. Okay. So Tuskegee, I saw them scrimmage. I think the key is their quarterback, Tommy Pede. I love the way he plays. Great high school quarterback. Good athlete, savvy. If they gel around him, we had Coach Toller on. We just released that episode for anybody that wants to watch it. We did a profile of him, and all you Tuskegee people, make sure you subscribe to us. But I think it's Tommy Pede goes is what they're going to do. They're replacing their whole secondary and I believe all their linebackers, but they tend to rebuild. And then we actually talked to Coach Dawson last night, the former coach of Champ, who's the defensive coordinator now at Briar Woods. And like I said, Matt, I cannot keep up with these moving down with the moves. So Woodgrove does throw it in there. And I think you're right. And by the way, any of you folks out towards Winchester, if you want to chime in, Millbrook, great programs. Millbrook, Sharandos and Stevens City, Hanley's the classic high school in, I believe, downtown Winchester. It's got like an architecture of like UVA. But yeah, so that's going to be one where I'll go with Tuscarora, but they've got a gel. So don't be surprised if Champ, and I need to find out more about Champ. So summing this up, I like Phoebus, Dinwiddie. We'll go with Tuscarora. I picked them to go all the way to the state semis last year. And then I'm going to go with Salem also. And I struggle to say Phoebus over Dinwiddie, but I'm going to say Phoebus over Dinwiddie. And I'm going to take Phoebus over Salem. I think for Tuscarora, it'll stop, or Champ, it'll stop when they get to that state semifinal. That Salem team is loaded. Danny Lewis, I want to get your take on that because I know how strong people feel about Dinwiddie down there. What's your take on who the Final Four and state champion will be, Danny?
Oh boy.
You're picking Dinwiddie. You gotta live.
I mean, it's hard not to. But it's also hard to repeat. I mean, don't bet against Dinwiddie, don't bet against Dalton, don't bet against Mills, that is. But Phoebus is loaded, Phoebus is stacked, and that would make for a whale of a game. I do think Salem probably comes out of the other side.
Right.
So Phoebus or Dinwiddie versus Salem would be my bet.
Larry, you know a lot about this class. What do you think on that Final Four that will be playing at Liberty again? Or the finals will be at Liberty again?
You guys have mentioned Dinwiddie. That's just a team that's been there, done that. But I mean, just Phoebus. I know we hear about Phoebus all the time. And as I said before, they got tremendous success. They've got the tradition. And again, like I heard Coach Blunt tell his players on one of the TV shows, he said, now it's these guys' turn to take it. It's their turn to see what they can do. When you, like I said, when you put that on a team and on players who've never experienced it, they've only heard about it, they get a chance to get a piece of that. That's all the motivation you need if you're an athlete.
Right. Okay. Jay Gholson.
Yes.
Who do you like?
Actually, for Division 4, I kind of like John Champ.
For what?
To go pretty far.
Oh, okay. We're talking about the Final Four.
That's a tough one. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Phoebus.
Champ could make it.
Yeah, but Phoebus. I'm not sold yet. I want to see Phoebus versus Oscar Smith on game 2 before I make that decision about Phoebus.
Yep. Oscar Smith's young. We'll talk about them with 6.
I know. Yeah. So
Very talented.
Final Four right now, I can't give a number for Division 4. I can't predict that right now.
But I think it's going to be the winner of Phoebus Dinwiddie. And I think with Phoebus, they're going to have a player that's a new starter that's going to be like, wow, look at this guy. I think that's the way it's going to be. And Larry, I'm brainstorming as far as the whole starting lineup, but there's a couple key players we left out also. There's some kids on that line that are young that are going to be Power 5 recruits. And that Emery D'Urso kid is big, very skilled. I think he's going to do well. And, I got Bootsy's name wrong last year, and I don't know the new quarterback's name, but the new quarterback and the new tailback are very, very good. It's just a matter of how they gel, and that tradition is going. So, of course I'm going to pick Phoebus, but I will not be surprised if Dinwiddie wins. And Phoebus is going to have a much harder road than they did last year. So moving on to 5, things get very interesting here. This is heavy with Loudoun County. This is heavy with a lot of Richmond, and this is the 757s region. I mean, no offense to Oscar Smith, Western Branch, and some of the other teams down there, but this is the 757s region. So, Larry, let's start off with you. I cannot believe Warwick is going to that region. Man, is that going to be something else? Yeah. We're talking about Maury, Kings Fork, and Warwick. And Maury is loaded this year. I know you've seen those guys.
Yeah.
Hit up.
Like Phoebus, Maury's got some good transfers coming in as well.
Maury Watford.
I mean, and as I told somebody, they said, they're out there recruiting. They might be out there recruiting, but when you're good and people know you're good and they know they can come play for you and be good, go there and be good. I mean, if you can make it happen, and they got some players coming over there. I'm like, it's Matt. I know Matt knows. Maury is going to be tough, and I'd say here's the thing: as good as Green Run has been the last 2 years, there's something to be said about a coach that knows how to do it. And Coach McCain, he was like this as a player.
Yep, and played at Maury for Delbert Cotton,
and played at Hampton. He drills into these guys what they can do and challenges them. They're gonna miss Peyton Jones, but they got Melvin Lowe, who did really well and spelled Jones in the state championship and in the playoffs. Really, Leon Clark, you're gonna hear more about him. He came over from Churchland. They got a beast of a guy in Fred Johnson who can play anywhere he wants to play. He's going to South Carolina. He's gonna be playing linebacker, tight end, wide receiver. Like I said, wherever he wants.
I've heard he's
to play.
unbelievable.
Yeah, Josh Powell, Kendall Daniels, a kid who missed the state championship game too. And I know Matt and I have talked about it. Had they had him, I'm not saying they would have beat Highland Springs, but he was a kid who could do some things, not only on the defensive side, but he can play quarterback as well. And he's coming back. They're just and they got a couple other kids. They got a couple of kids from Booker T. They got some kids. I mean, they got a lot of, they got some talent. They're going to be really, really good. I'm interested to see what they do this year. But again, I think it comes down to, as good as I would even say, I thought not Bayside, Green Run may have had more talent than Maury last year. But when it comes down to Coach McCain and what he does and how he drives these kids and motivates these kids and challenges these kids, they're gonna be really tough to beat. I mean, the one thing that he's always said is he tried his program after Highland Springs. He doesn't mind playing these big teams. He doesn't care playing those teams. He knows if you're gonna be the best, you gotta play the best, and he never backs down from a challenge. And when he doesn't mind going against Highland Springs, that does something. And I'll never forget something else somebody told me. They said a rivalry only happens if you win some games. So when he was getting beat by Highland Springs all these times, believe me, when he saw Highland Springs leaving, he said, see ya, we'll play you in the regular season. But he knows that's going to make them better. And and Maury, I mean, Maury's going to be tough. They're going to be tough to beat. But like, as you said, we got Warwick, we got Green Run, we got a lot of good teams down here.
Nansemond River also.
Nansemond River has always, they played very well. You're going to have some other teams that, I think Kings Fork. I think Kings Fork could be decent as well. I think Kings Fork could be.
They beat Western Branch last year. A lot of people forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, so Kings Fork, I think they're going to be good. I mean, they got a very good running back who's coming back, Javon Ford, who'll be probably one of our top players next year coming out. I mean, the kid has rushed for more than 2,000 yards already and 20 touchdowns. I really think that's and you cannot. I mean, I think Indian River could be good. They got a good running back, a quarterback coming back. They got a really good defender. Oh man, what's his name? The line.
Jordan Harris. He's
oh
a
my
beast.
God, the kid is he's a beast. So
Yeah.
I mean, 5 is gonna be tough, but I still like when you have Coach McCain, who's been there, done it. He knows how to do it. You can't go wrong with it when you have a team, when you have him coaching your team.
Yep. Matt, what's your take? Because we know those teams. Can anybody? I mean, Maury's going to earn getting out of there, and they're going to be battle tested for that Beach District, Green Run region, and then facing Stonebridge, the Richmond. We'll get Danny involved with that. But Matt, what's your take on that region with Warwick? And we haven't talked a lot about Warwick. Jake Delhomme, Messiah. Delhomme.
Yeah.
6'2" or 3, 200 pounds.
Special.
He's got a Florida State offer. So, Matt, what do you think? Can anybody take down Maury?
Listen, just watch Warwick in the scrimmage take apart Cox, and Cox is a disciplined, well-coached team, and Messiah Delhomme's very good. They got some transfers this offseason. Good quarterback in Eduardo Rios back. They won a region championship. Corey Harrison's got them pointed in the right direction. As Larry said, Nansman and Kingsford have to be watched out for. But Maury stacked. They have upwards of 14 Division I FBS, FCS scholarship offered players on their roster. They're loaded. Doree McCain is elevating himself as one of the premier coaches in the state, with names like Lauren Johnson at Highland Springs, Mickey Thompson at Stonebridge, Gerald Overton at Freedom, Doug Smith at Appomattox. This team is as talented, maybe more so. Oh, Jeremy Blunt at Phoebus. Don't leave him out for sure. He's in that. No doubt, no question, no doubt. Coach Blunt at Phoebus for sure. But Maury is as talented, if not more than her 2019 team. All that being said, and throwing them tons of rose petals, their first 3 games are against Wise, Highland Springs, and Dinwiddie. So it is not a given they're 3-0 or 2-1 even, because Highland Springs and Dinwiddie are expecting to beat them. Whether they do or not remains to be seen. Highland Springs has never lost to them. And there's a team up there in Northern Virginia, you know quite well, Kirk, in Stonebridge, who has beaten Maury before, that thinks they can get them. But I do think Coach McCain has set up his schedule, including the scrimmage with Phoebus, which is going to serve them well for these games and these first 3 games for the potential roadblock at the end. Sorry to Green Run, Indian River, Warwick, Nansman. You're all good. You're all worthy, but you're not on Maury's level right now. That's just the bottom line here. I'm just going to speak it to you truthfully. Maury Stonebridge should be your state championship again for like the 3rd time since 2019 come December at Old Dominion.
Danny Lewis, we're going to let you chime in with that region for Richmond, but I don't know that we've talked about a region more than Maury. And of note, Larry Rubama, didn't they beat Gonzaga, as in the Gonzaga on North Capitol Street in DC, like 56-6 or something?
I know they played them. I was on vacation, but the fact that's again challenging themselves, going up there, playing up in DC against Gonzaga, which is one of the top teams in that unbelievable. But he reminds me a lot of Richard Morgan when Richard Morgan was here. Richard Morgan didn't care who he played. He played Booker T. Washington out of Miami. He played a team up in on 2 teams from Miami, South Carolina, Ohio. These are guys who believe that they don't care who's on the field with them. They feel they can play with them, and they're always trying to get better. And that's the way McCain is. He just got that mindset where, okay, play us. We'll see what happens. And he gets the most. He gets the most out of those guys. And those guys will. I mean, they will fight for him. You watch them in practice, how they go through practice. I mean, their practice is just like Oscar Smith back in those days. They run like a college practice. And that prepare these guys go into the game thinking, okay, hey, we're gonna beat anybody, even if they don't. They don't think they can beat somebody. So that's yeah.
I was just thinking, guys, the Beach District is not going to like this preview because the great football programs. Green Run is loaded. We had Coach Brandon Williams. We talked to him last week. They've got, I don't know, Matt, 6-7 Power 5 recruits. Of course, the big is the defensive back going to Virginia Tech. Help me out here.
Keelan Brody Adams. He's as good a wide receiver as in the state.
He's wide receiver. Special. He's special. He's special. And talking to him and talking to those other guys, they want, again, they say they want to get to the state championship game. But when you say that, you got Maury that's there who's beaten them the last 2 times. And until they get over that, yeah.
Well, Keelan Adams, out of respect, Green Run beat Phoebus 72-0 in 1984. You need to come on our show. But Kibbsville, Daryl Cherry, Matt, obviously Green Run's the favorite here, but let's talk about the rest of the beach. Let's talk about Salem. They've had some transfers. Cox has got a great defensive lineman. Let's give the Beach District a little bit of love.
Oh, no, listen, when I say Maury Stonebridge on a collision course, it takes nothing from some other very, very good programs out there. Green Run has got a ton of talent. Brandon Williams has done a wonderful job. Salem under Mark Hall, who we covered, Larry and I did as a player at Green Run. Then UVA, played linebacker. He's got a really talented quarterback that Penn out of the Ivy League's recruiting in Jason Scooter Williams. He's got a offensive lineman junior named Jalen Gilchrist that SEC schools are recruiting. Indian River's going to be a factor in that region. Kimbsville's one of the best turnaround stories in the entire state of Virginia with what Daryl Cherry's accomplished the last 2 years. And he's got 2 already committed players in Deacon Rawls, a lineman to JMU, and a wide receiver, defensive back in Raleigh McIntosh to Marshall. So there's some depth there. And I don't even think you rule out on a given night a Cox with Gerard Johnson, defensive lineman committed to Virginia Tech, a Bayside, a tall teams that could pull a first-round upset. Deep Creek is now in that region. Andre Twine's a really good coach. Lost a couple players, but he's got some good ones back in Ricky Foreman at defensive line. So there's going to be maybe a 6-3, 5-4 surprise in that first round. And there will be some storylines to watch, even though I think Green Run's going to run into more again. That'll be the storyline. Can they finally conquer that demon? And there are some teams worthy of attention because there's talent in that region for sure.
Right. Okay. So we're going to move over to the region that's primarily Richmond, Danny, and we talked about LC Bird. LC Bird's a great program. You've got Douglas Freeman. You've got Midlothian. I would say this is a question, Danny and Matt. Is LC Bird the preseason favorite to win that region?
So coming from the off season, I thought they were. I'm a little more undecisive now. They lost one of their best defensive players, Xavier Carpenter, to injury. They lost one of their 2 best running backs to transfer to another school. Their starting quarterback last year, he's not playing. He got injured last season, so he's not back. So there's a lot of questions surrounding the Skyhawks. As the offseason became practice and getting ready for the season, I really started going between Bird, Freeman, and Matoaka. And if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably pick a different one. But it's kind of been that rotation. Each has their distinct advantage. You know, Bird got there last year, lost to Highland Springs. Troy Taylor's a great coach. But then you've got Matoaka, who started out as a sleeper for me, but has now kind of started to ascend to where I'm kind of wanting to put them as a favorite. They returned 17 starters from last year, pretty much their entire offense. A defensive end that's got 20-plus offers. They are a really sound-looking team on paper. And then you've got Douglas Freeman, that's one of the deepest teams in Region 5C. So one of them 3, I think, could win it. But then again, you know, we've got some new guys from the western part of the state, Patrick Henry, Roanoke. You got Mountain View up in Stafford, Franklin County. So obviously Louisa, which Hatfield, you know, spoke of earlier, they could all have something to say about who comes out of this region as well.
Right. So Patrick Henry, Roanoke is, I thought they were, Matt, help us out here. I thought they were in the other region.
They dropped to 5C, but Matt Cates can probably jump in here on this because guys, and you and Jay know this, Kirk, they call 6C the Occoquan region. I want to call 5C the Opportunity region because Highland Springs is no longer in that region. Bird and Danny broke it down well. The injuries makes you wonder, but Troy Taylor's got a team that's going to be gritty. They'll run the ball. They'll still be in the mix. Freeman's a team to watch out for. You have to watch out for Matoke, who's on the rise. Hermitage has a huge opportunity because game one, they play Oscar Smith. So you want to get the state's attention, play them close or beat them. You're on the radar screen. And Patrick Henry Roanoke, led by the linebacker going to Notre Dame and Bodie Cahoon, they're a team that's been knocking on the door, and I think they're close to breaking through that door.
Okay, that's where – did they switch regions? They were in D last year. Stonebridge is
yes.
Are we just mixing those together? I just want to make sure.
No, they were in 5D. They lost in the semis, I believe.
Right.
Matt Case can maybe help me out. I think it was Mountain View beat them
Mountain
last
View.
year. Yeah.
Mountain View. That's a great position. So it sounds
Yeah.
like Region D, Region C for Richmond is up for grabs. I'm going to go with LC Bird. Coach Taylor, we got our wires mixed the other night. We had a bunch of coaches queued up and had our times wrong, but we'll definitely get you on. But this region is primarily, Stafford County and then Loudoun County. Loudoun County is all 4 and 5. Of course, the headliner is Stonebridge. And then Patrick Henry, with Bodie going to Notre Dame. That's a great team. And then did Mountain View move? I can't keep talking. Where did they go?
They're Region 6B.
Six.
As a boy.
So you're talking Riverbend. Jay,
Now,
I want to hear you.
About Stonebridge, I think Stonebridge's schedule is tougher than Maury's schedule. Stonebridge plays Madison, who's in the state championship last year.
Friday night.
They play Good Counsel in Maryland, who's
Martinsburg, Quince Orchard.
Yeah. They play Centerville, who's a top 20 team.
Mm-hmm.
So Stonebridge, I think with their offense being how the single wing offense they have is very confusing. I think they can go. I think basically they'll play Maury in Ashburn in November.
No, they can't play Maury in Ashburn. They can play the Richmond team in Ashburn. They play Maury in state championship or Green Run.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And Highland Springs is no longer in the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Matt Hatfield, I want to get your take on this. This is I think this is Stonebridge's region. This is arguably one of Mickey's best teams.
It is. He's got a well schooled group. Certainly with Naeem Abdul-Rahim Gladding, with Caden Zalaki up front, Marquez running the ball, Rodello up front, defensively Miles Turpin's a stud going to Wake Forest at safety, Jonathan Newton, Sean Robertson, Nate Moore. They have a lot of returnees. Maybe not as many marquee level guys or a player that you'd say, oh my gosh, jaw drops like Jacob Thomas did with that game-winning touchdown pass, or Zeke Wimbush, who caught it. Nonetheless, he's got depth at a lot of positions, and he has a lot of different ways he can beat you. And I think that schedule that Jay hit on, playing so many quality teams, don't get deceived by the record if Maury or Stonebridge has 1 or 2 L's and say, what's wrong with them? No, they're playing national level. Top teams on the East Coast are going to get them hardened for the playoffs. Now, there are a couple teams in that region that I do think will at least be able to say they're going to see if they measure up and have the goods. Briarwoods is building under Mike Burnett. I like the direction they're going. Independence has athletes. They started out 6-0 last year. They got Max Rudolph back, excuse me, defensive end, tight end for them. Also a linebacker in Jackson Thorne, who's a stud. They didn't finish well. So there are some teams there that want to see if they can hang with Stonebridge for a full game. They believe they can do it for segments, possessions, maybe a quarter or two. Doing it for a full 48 minutes, that's a different ball of wax. We'll see if this year, if they have that or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We had Coach Mike Burnett on last night. We talked to them, and Brady Carmichael's their quarterback, and he saw our interview with Mickey, and he said, "I think you're counting us out." So it's interesting that you bring that up. I would say one of the names that you didn't mention that's a sleeper, and he hasn't played that much. It's Gabriel Colthurst. He goes by G.
Yeah,
he's 6'5". He's a lot bigger than he looks from the stands. Unbelievable basketball player. He's got a little bit too much athleticism stuffed in that body, and I love the way the kid plays. He's a guy, one of those guys that's in high school. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to be Cam Chance or anything. He's one of these guys that, 3 or 4 years from now, be like, oh, my goodness, remember him? Mm-hmm. But I think that if they gel, I think this team will be special. Matt, I want to get you to chime in on Patrick Henry of Roanoke, though. I mean, that's a great program, and they're going to be in the running, as well as River Bend.
Yeah, I mean, last year they hit some real historical milestones. They had their first 9-win season since the year 2000. They beat Salem last year. It was the first time they beat Salem in 28 years. They were 0-10 against them, dating back to 1994. Yeah, you talk about the Cahoon kid. He's going to be huge for them. Their quarterback, Joey Beasley, he's back for his 3rd year as starting quarterback. They're starting running back, Arjuan Webb. He's back for his 4th year as starting running back. So they have a lot of returning weapons. Coach said that they have double-digit returners. So they are they're going to be making that next step because they have all of these guys back and ready to move forward and play in a new region.
Yeah. Jay and I were talking about those bus rides from Loudoun County down to Roanoke for William Fleming and Patrick Henry, and vice versa, because William Fleming came up here last year. So yeah, that should be interesting. I'm going to be at the Madison Stonebridge game on Friday night. If you haven't subscribed to us, Stonebridge, we've got about 7 episodes with Stonebridge students or coaches. And that'll be a good test. We're going to go to 6, but Madison, Vienna. I know, Jay, you're going to be the doctor maestro of 6, but Madison will have a solid team, but they lost a lot. So that's Stonebridge. Mickey is not afraid to lay 40 or 50 on somebody, Coach Thompson. So that's a great barometer. And like you said, Jay, the next 3 games, if they come out with 2 or 3 losses, I still think that they could be fine by game 6 or 7. So let's close up 5 and go to 6. Go ahead, Jay.
Look at Madison last year. They were 0-3. And were in the state championship.
And they ran off the rest and lost Oscar Smith.
Yeah,
right.
No, they lost to Freedom.
I'm sorry, Freedom. Sorry about that, Daryl Overton. I would say that, I mean, Madison has quite a bit coming back, but I think Stonebridge, and there's a few other teams, but this could be an interesting year for Stonebridge. I think the big thing is Coach Thompson on our episode, I think it's episode 173, said he thinks this team can be special. He's had some unbelievable teams, by the way. Jonathan Allen has played for him. He's got a lot of guys that have gone to Power 5. So I think if they gel, this could be one of their best offensive teams ever. And don't bet against him. I'm obviously picking Stonebridge to come out of here. And I like Stonebridge. I like Stonebridge to be in the state championship. And I think they're going to play Maury.
Yeah.
So, and I think Maury will win the state championship. So the school on Hay Road, I got you losing the state championship. Mickey Thompson's lost I think 9-10 times. Matt, you probably know the stat. So that's my Final 4. I want to hear from Larry Rubama and Matt Hatfield, because this is 5 is pretty much the 7-5-7. Larry, what do you think about, could Stonebridge or LC Bird take on Maury?
I just like what Maury. I see Maury and Stonebridge in the finals, and I know that Maury has some hard feelings about Stonebridge, so I think that will definitely play into it. And I can see that whole week McCain just using all of that motivation, and they're gonna come out ready to whoop some behind. But I'm gonna say Maury Stonebridge the finals, and I'm a homer. I mean, I just know McCain. I know, and Matt knows McCain as a coach. I see them doing it. They have so much respect for Highland Springs, but they're glad to see Highland Springs gone. So, so I like Maury to win it.
And don't forget, Larry, that would be the rubber match, because 2019 at Hampton, Maury held on and won.
Right.
2021, Stonebridge came from behind to beat an Old Dominion. This would be the 3rd time in every 2 years. This would be at ODU. Yeah. And I think this could be a classic finish. It breaks the 1-1 tie there. And Kirk, your 4 again are what? Maury, Stonebridge, Green Run, and you said Bird, your 4th one?
Yeah, I'm going with Bird.
Yeah, Green Run. I definitely see Green Run. They're so talented. They got a lot of talent, but it's just something about a team who's been there, done that. Trying to beat them, trying to knock them off is tough.
Yeah,
and the other thing too is that unlike Maury's playing some real tough teams to get to the finals. Green Run Matt, would you agree? I think they're going to just roll right through the Beach District and not be tested, and that says a lot as well.
Yeah.
I think it hurts the Beach teams not getting to play an out-of-district game. And that, like
Exactly.
Danny said, that for that 5C, with Highland Springs out of it now, I could change my pick on that every couple of days. I might go Patrick Henry Roanoke today. I might go Matoka next week. I might like Bird come playoff time, but that one feels like it's going to change week to week.
Yeah, Danny, I was just getting ready to say that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that Region C. So all you folks down at those great schools in Richmond, leave a comment. Tell us what we're getting wrong. We know Highland Springs is leaving. We know the history with LC Bird. And we didn't say a whole lot about Midlothian either. And there's some really good programs. Hermitage could be under the radar. But I got Maury beating Stonebridge, and Brandon Pena, the quarterback for Stonebridge, who played some last year when the starter was injured. If he gels, they could be special, but Maury's going to be hard to beat. So Jay Gholson, I don't know if I've ever heard you be quiet this long. Let's get to 6, man. That's Prince William and Fairfax. And by the way, Jay does not live in Prince William. He lives in Chantilly, which is Fairfax County, because he's rich.
But whoa.
You don't want to step down to Prince William, man. You got to be one of the top 5 wealthiest counties, man. You don't want to step down to top 14 or something. Jay is a
Carpenter County bred.
All right, so that's all in jest, by the way. So let's start off with Region B. By the way, one of the best regions in all of Virginia high school. We've got, oh my goodness, Freedom Woodbridge. We had Coach Overton on the other night. Great guy, and he's got a lot of talent. Side note, we talked to Coach Dawson last night that used to be a champ. Schools have a recruiting coordinator now. So this stuff of guys are those days are over. Okay, this is like NIL and the transfer portal. You get rid of that. I mean, it is what it is. You know, don't hate the player, hate the game. So the thing is can anybody touch Freedom from Region B? Champ is leaving. And, you know, you're going to look at Patriot, you're going to look at Battlefield, you know, Forest Park's got some big players. These Nova kids are big. That's the one thing about Nova kids. Jay, you are the maestro. Jay's the voice of Freedom Woodbridge. What do you think, Jay? Can anybody take Freedom?
Let me say this. Okay, Freedom has 15 starters coming back.
Yep.
And for the first time in my history, and I've done this since 1977, watching football as a kid, playing, coaching, and announcing, they have 4 Division I skill players.
Right.
3 receivers and Jeff Overton as running back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, barring injuries, the teams that could beat them, one is Battlefield. Battlefield has 3 good skill players.
Right.
Brandon Boggs, All-State. They have Brandon Bukowski, 6'4" wide receivers, going to Villanova.
We've had him on with Cam Courtney, by the way, Battlefield. Make sure you check us out. Go ahead.
And Cole Woodson, who's Caleb Woodson's younger brother, who runs a 4.5 40. So they have 3 good receivers at Battlefield. So you never know with them. Patriot lost a lot of players. However, they have a good line. And Aarons, Rudd, they have a running back in Jackson McCarter, who runs a 4.4 40. Quarterback is 6'4". Tyler Lesson, he's a junior. You never know. So they could also be a challenge for Freedom. And the last school, which might surprise you, is Potomac High School.
Okay.
Last year, they were 5-5. Okay. Those kids literally are neighbors of the Freedom kids.
Right.
They're maybe 2 miles apart, the schools. So they know each other. Everybody's coming back. They have a big lineman coming back. They have a good quarterback and a good running back. And last year against Freedom, it was close in the first half between Potomac and Freedom. So if anybody were to come close to Freedom, it's Battlefield, Patriot, and Potomac. And maybe Mountain View.
Chris Jones left and went to Fairfax, and we're going to talk about Fairfax County next. That's a great point. Matt Hatfield, this is a homer pick, but I can't see anybody beating Freedom Woodbridge out of that region. What's your take?
out of that region, I would concur. I think it's going to be hard, even though I think Jay outlined it. There are some quality programs across that region. If you put Patriot, Battlefield, even a couple others in different regions, they would feel good about their chances of winning a region championship. I'm sure they would like to, and this is not to knock 6C and 6D this year, but if you were to put them in 6C or 6D this year, they'd love their chances. Now, 6A, the region that Highland Springs goes into with Thomasdale, Manchester, and Oscar Smith and Western Branch, that's got 5 of our top 10 teams in the state, and that's as good a region as I think there is in the entire state. So you've got those teams going to be so hardened. Whoever comes out of it, you would certainly look at Highland Springs as the favorite, and it's a dilemma you take, because to me, it's 1A, 1B across the board. You have a record-setting program with everybody back in freedom, and you have a Highland Springs program that has been really, in terms of the upper echelon of classifications, a nationally ranked program that's been the best in Virginia the last 5-6 years. Who's the best in Virginia? And here's the sad part. They can't play in the state championship. They play in the state semis unless the VHSL is to change it.
Right.
We need to have the 2 best teams, regardless of regions, whether it's Class 6 or Class 1, reorganize them, reshuffle them at the top 4. I know it's something Larry and I argue every year with basketball. Why can't we get the 2 best teams? We don't care if it's the quarterfinals, the semifinals. We want them playing at the end.
Yeah.
But the last 2 years, like Matt says, the last 2 years, or maybe 3 years, you have Oscar Smith blowing out Madison. You have Freedom blowing out Madison. And Oscar Smith blew out South County.
Yep.
And the best games were the state semifinals.
So and remember the COVID year, Oscar Smith, Massaponax, I think Larry remembers this. That was the last drive. Massaponax was driving. So sometimes you get, and people, this is no knock on the 7-5-7 teams here, but people felt last year in Class 5 that your state finals really was Highland Springs Stonebridge. So you get a lot of years. It could be 2 teams from whether it be Nova, western part of the state, wherever. I think you want to get, they should take, once you get to the Final 4, they need to take your 4 power ratings or records and then reseed you. 1 through 4. That way you get a true measure of the scheduling, your strength of schedule, just like you have with the college football playoff.
Yeah.
If you don't want to see the 2 best meet in the semifinals, you want to see them meet in the national championship game.
Yeah.
So the question is, Highland Springs has a lot returning, arguably the best program in the last 5 years, 6 years. But they are in a region with Oscar Smith, Western Branch. Western Branch, we had Rashad Cook on last night with, by the way, Tom Hall of Manchester. They've got a lot coming back. And we haven't said anything about the Richmond teams, Danny. So the Richmond teams, Thomasdale and Manchester, are right there. So the question, I think, for the whole panel is, can anyone challenge Highland Springs in this region? Danny, what's your take? You're a Richmond guy. You went to Varina, which is East Richmond, right there near Highland Springs. I'd like to see your take. I think if one team can, I'm going to say Western Branch. But Danny, what's your take?
Well, not knowing a lot about Western Branch and Oscar Smith, because that's not my area of expertise, but we'll know really soon whether Manchester has anything for Highland Springs, because they play not this week, because Highland Springs has Miramar, but they play in 2 weeks.
Right.
So that's going to be an early kind of look ahead to see if Manchester is for real. If Highland Springs has any rust with replacing some starters who graduated last year. Plus, who knows, they could meet again in the playoffs. So it's like 5C. I look at Highland Springs, Manchester, Thomasdale, and like Hatfield alluded to, any one of them could come out of that region. I'd say it's, given Highland Springs history and a Hall of Famer, even though he's not retired, but Coach Johnson, you don't bet against that man. You don't bet against Coach Hall, but I'd put Highland Springs 1A and Manchester 1B in that region.
Let me add this though. If Highland Springs loses to Miramar, okay, and so the one loss, let's say Manchester goes undefeated, or Western Branch goes undefeated. So the travel to those places, I would then give them the advantage over Highland Springs.
It would give Highland Springs the advantage? Is that what
you're
saying?
if they're on the road, for the state semifinals. If they're on the road, I would give Manchester or Oscar Smith, Western Branch, an advantage over Highland Springs if Highland Springs is on the road playing there for the state semifinals.
Well,
you could make that case, but
our regionals,
you could make that case.
Let me tell you why. When they played at Stonebridge, there were 12 men on the field, 11 players, and that referee. And it was a bad call against Highland Springs in that fourth quarter that cost them the game.
It was a terrible call.
Yeah.
Sorry,
terrible call.
Excessive celebration.
Celebrating, yeah. That's what I mean by that. When you're on the road in playoffs, it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, home cooking.
Yeah.
Larry,
the first round matchups, guys. If you get like a 4-5, because teams have these tough schedules with Manchester, Dale, Oscar. Larry, think about this. Could you imagine if because they take blemishes, we get like a Highland Springs, Oscar Smith 4-5? Could you just imagine the craziness of some of those first round and semifinal games that 6A is going to produce? It's going to be epic.
Yeah.
Matt, you're not saying Highland Springs and Oscar Smith could be 4th or 5th seeds, are you?
I wouldn't think that, but my point is if you're playing Miramar and you're playing Manchester and you're playing Morey and Oscar Smith plays Phoebus, and let's say a Dale or a Manchester was to pull off a 10-0, 9-1, a Western Branch was to pull it off, anything's possible. So you could have a second round matchup of one of those. So what I'm saying is whoever you get in the 4-5 game is going to be a heck of a first round game worthy of a regional final at any level in the state. And what I'm saying is you're going to have a team go home in the first round and a couple of teams go home in the second round that could win other regions in Class 6 or in other regions across the state.
100%.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring up,
that was last year, Colonial Forge, 5-5, beating undefeated Battlefield. Yeah. Forge played Highland Springs. They played Tusker. They played the tough teams all year long. And Battlefield played nobody. And look what happened.
So we're going to finish this out with Fairfax County, 1.2, 1.3 million people. That's the other half of the Class 6. But we did not talk about Thomas Dale. Coach Kevin Tucker, that's Ken Oxendine's high school. Manchester, I believe, beat them last year and then lost to Western Branch. Danny, what can you tell us about Thomas Dale?
They are as good as they have been. Ethan Minner's back. He's I believe it's a 4-year starter. It might be a 3-year starter. He's committed to UVA.
Quarterback,
What's that?
Is he a quarterback?
He's quarterback, yes.
Right.
They have their biggest hole to fill on offense is going to be running back. They lost Brandon Rose last to graduation. But I mean, their offensive line is pretty much intact. Their skill set, quarterback, wide receivers, they're all back. I mean, offensively, they're sound. Defensively, they've got 6-7 starters back. So they're going to be in that fight. I mean, that Manchester Thomas Dale playoff game last year was decided on the last play.
Right.
I mean, that they were right there with Manchester, and I expect the same this year. Okay. They'll get an early
38-35, right?
Yes. Yeah, them and Bird will match up in 2 weeks. So we'll know a lot about both of those schools. Granted, Bird's 5C, but both want to contend for region titles. That's going to be a big one early.
Okay. So Class 6 guarantees a Fairfax County team is going to be in, well, actually, Arlington. There's a couple of Arlington teams. But looking at, Region C, great teams have come out of there. South County, you've got Robinson. Fairfax is loaded this year with Chris Jones, even though they lost Tony Rojas. Jay and Matt Hatfield. A lot of people do not give this region the respect. We had Lake Braddock's coach on just the other night. This is, I think, going to come down to probably South County. They've lost a lot. And then that other Fairfax, Robinson, Lake Braddock, those are the teams that I see in play. Jay, I know you know Fairfax County. I don't want to get Matt Hatfield, but for that Region C, I don't know if I know enough, but I would say it's going to come between, Fairfax and maybe Robinson.
Well, I saw Lake Braddock play a scrimmage against who did they play? Battlefield. And I mean, they're okay, but I would pick that region. I'll pick Fairfax.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's for people that don't know, that's the eastern part of Fairfax County. So that's the part that's going up against City of Alexandria. And then the region D is the western part, your South Lakes. Madison's kind of right in the middle, but you know, you get and you got your Arlington teams. But Matt Hatfield, I know you know something about all these teams. I mean, this is a rich tradition up here. We're trying to get more coverage in Fairfax County. Who are you picking to come out of that region, Matt?
I don't think Fairfax is a bad pick because you're bringing Chris Jones, the linebacker transfer from Mountain View, but I do worry about them having to replace 8 starters on defense and kind of having some brand new skill position guys on offense.
Right.
And I like Jerry Pannoni, who was an assistant at Fairfax, now coming back to where he won a state championship as a head coach at South County.
Yep.
They got a tough game too with Quince Orchard out of Maryland. That's going to be a very tough one for them to win. But after that, they'll go into West Springfield, Fairfax, Hayfield, Madison. So they'll have some tests, and I think they can hit their stride as they go into late October, early November. They might not be a 1 seed. I don't think they care. They can win that region as a 2, 3, or 4 seed. I like Jordan Dennis back at quarterback. I think he gives a different dynamic running and throwing, even though he's
Phenomenal
not 5'9".
athlete.
3-year starter, 5,500 yards, 66 touchdown passes. He's 22-4 as a starter, and they've always got receivers at South County. So I'll go with them.
Yep. Matt, you know, think about West Springfield. They were very good last year. Typically not a big football program.
Yeah, they got some good pieces back on defense. Offensively, they got some holes to fill. I like their nucleus, but I'm not sure they're quite at the same level. I think they're more probably in that next tier where Lake Braddock is. But they do have some guys that can make some noise. And in fact, one of them to watch out for West Springfield is a William & Mary commit, Brady Eccles on the defensive line. He's the guy that's going to get after quarterbacks. So they're a team that's, again, that region at times has been called by me on my Hats Hits on Twitter, the seatbelt Occoquan region, because they'll produce a couple 34, 32, 38, 35 like that Dale and Manchester playoff games. So their region semifinal games and even a couple of the quarterfinals could be compelling as we get into late October, early November.
Okay. Region D, like I said, is mainly your Arlington schools and your Western Fairfax County. We had Coach Counts on last night, so everybody in Vienna, we're going to release that. They lost a lot, but they're always in the running. They lost a lot. Madison, when I look at this, guys, I see Madison, Centerville, and Westfield is going to be back in play. And I like Centerville or Westfield coming out. We actually had Coach Shields on too from Centerville. Jay, what do you think as far as Western Fairfax County, Region D?
I saw Westfield scrimmage. They got a good line.
They're always big.
Yeah, they're big. Some big boys there, and I think they're. And of course, they have another kid there, Connor Marin, Taylor Marin's younger brother. Just as fast, great hands, good corner. So I think they'll probably be a top 2 seed in that region.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Westfield. I like Westfield coming out.
They play Patriot this Friday, which will be very interesting to watch those 2 teams play. So I'll say it live.
Where's that game, Jay?
At Patriot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt Hatfield, what do you think? Because there's some other teams we didn't mention here, like Langley, Yorktown. Yorktown is always good.
Yeah, I think there's some teams that are going to make some noise. I think Centerville lost a whole lot, including the stud running back and Isaiah Ragland. Coach Shields, it might take him a year to be back in that region championship level. But I don't think Westfield's a bad pick at all. I mean, with Matthew Jenks at quarterback, he can sling it. I think he's one of the better QBs in Nova, good baseball player. They made a run in baseball, of course. They're going to make a run, by the way, in basketball. They got some good athletes in hoops coming up this winter. But Kyle Simmons is no stranger to the big stage. He's got Morin's little brother who's starting to turn some heads. The one thing I will say is I learned my lesson last year. I didn't have Madison in our top 10, and people said, what are you doing? They opened up 0-3, and I said, see, told you so. And then they ran off that big run to the state championship. Then I said, what was I doing? Coach Counts will find a way to replace the holes. So I will say that they probably eke it out against Westfield, but on paper, it doesn't look like Madison should get there. It didn't last year, and they found a way. So you do wonder if Madison's kind of the new Westfield, but Westfield could be making that move up. So I think those two might be on a collision course for 6D. And I would give the 6C champ a slight edge over to 6D champ this year, whereas in the last 2 years, Madison was able to get through that block of Fairfax and South County. So I think a little bit more power in the Nova section is in C than D.
Okay. So who wins the second place game, which is Fairfax County, to get to the state finals and face the winner of Freedom Wood? I'm jokingly saying that, but I mean, we have to admit that the other side of the draw with Freedom Woodbridge and then that loaded region with Highland Springs, Oscar Smith, Western Branch, Manchester, Thomas Dale. I'll go with Fairfax. I'll stick with my pick in Westfield. And I like Fairfax to get there, but don't be surprised about South County. Jay, who do you like going up against Freedom Woodbridge? Because I'm picking them to win the whole thing.
I would say Westfield.
So you like Westfield
over Madison.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, actually, I take that back. No, I take that back. South County.
And by the way, 5 and 6 are at UVA this year. They switched it from ODU. So this is going to be at Scott Stadium.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, they moved it to
Sure.
I'm certain they moved it to UVA. Matt, am I right on that?
That doesn't know either.
I was surprised by that.
News to me.
I heard the same
last I
thing.
heard was it was at
VHSL
ODU,
website has it as UVA. So
Was it really?
maybe it was a typo. Yeah. So I like ODU better, even though UVA is a nicer drive. So
But I would say South County versus Freedom.
Matt Hatfield, did you pick one? You said you're going to go with Madison, and you also
I'll
like
go
South
with-
County.
I'll go with SoCo. I'll go with
Okay,
South
so
County.
South County.
Yeah.
So the big question is Freedom and Highland Springs. I've already picked Freedom on a previous episode 174. And by the way, Highland Springs is a great program, but I just think Freedom's too good. And I feel pretty strong about that pick. And I'm not trying to slight Highland Springs. I wouldn't be shocked if they won. And then, obviously the winner of that game is going to win the state championship. Jay, can you see, you're the voice of the Freedom Eagles. I mean, why am I asking you this question? Can you see anybody beating Freedom?
If they're healthy, no.
Okay.
That's the key. If they're healthy, no. And if they, of course, they should have a number one seed and have home games for the playoffs. But if they play at Highland Springs, that's a different conversation right there. That's a different conversation.
Highland Springs could have a higher power ranking, because of schedule.
Well, Freedom's
So-
playing DeMatha. They're playing DeMatha. They're playing St. Michael's. They're playing Verina. There's no weakling on their out of district schedule. They're all strong teams.
Yeah, but I mean, Highland Springs through the playoffs. Don't the power ratings go through the playoffs? So they're
No, only 10 games. Just
okay.
10 games.
Great. I'm glad you, because that was more of a question. All
Yeah.
right. So Matt, do you have a do you feel like we all do about that semifinal being the state champion? So you've got South County. Are they going to face Freedom Woodbridge or Highland Springs?
Can I flip a coin? I mean, that is as hard a
Right.
question as there is to answer. I would tell you I might go 51 to 49% ever so slightly to Freedom, but I think it's extremely close. And Lauren Johnson, to me, is as good a leader of men as there is in the entire state of Virginia. It's hard to go against that guy. He's got a quarterback who's going to Maryland and Christian Martin, who's tough to defend. Freedom is coming off a record-setting year. So there might be a little, to me, it's going to be who's got the more hunger. Is Freedom more hungry to prove Highland Springs is ranked higher nationally, so that's bothering us because they got the records last year? Or is Highland Springs more bothered by the fact that, well, we won the 5 title, 6 shows us more. We did the highest classification now. So
Right.
Who's got the extra motivation to go beat the other might determine the game of the century, which is what it will build to be if they're both in that game without a blemish. If they both make it through those schedules without a blemish, then you've got two teams that are probably top 50, if not top 25 in America at that point. It'll be something to be seen for sure. So you're splitting hairs. I mean, you're really splitting hairs between now and December. My answer here on August 21st could be entirely different come December 1st.
Exactly.
Or in 2 or 3 weeks, because of injuries and Miramar and Freedom, how they play against Verina should be very interesting. But if it's anything like last year, I mean, no one tested Freedom.
But the reason I would give the slight edge to Freedom too is they have the path to get there is easier for them than Highland Springs, because again, Highland Springs is in a tough region. You've got Dale, Manchester, Smith Branch. So if you got to pick someone, you might go with them because their region to get out of is not as fierce.
Right. And then it'll come down to injuries. All right.
Now, last year, though, Kirk, I will say this about Freedom. That Stonebridge game was close until a bad snap.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they didn't blow out.
Stonebridge had problems snapping the ball all last year, by the way. So
I didn't know that. But yeah, so yeah.
Okay. Well, guys, this has been a marathon, but I think here's the difference. We didn't sit here and just look at the seeds from last year and go on. We had a lot of cross-reference. I appreciate Matt Case, you hanging in here. Hopefully you got a little better feel just being here for 4 weeks. State of Virginia is a great place for football. We got guys like Lawrence Taylor and Michael Vick and Percy Harvin. We go on and on. And by the way, episode 69, Rusty and I debate the best high school football players in the history of Virginia based on their high school careers. So we don't go with if they weren't like Lawrence Taylor. We didn't really put in there because he wasn't highly recruited. He was basically going to Richmond. Then Carolina got him late. Carolina is great going up in the Hampton Roads, but. So the point I'm making is that we drill down, right? And everybody can put the marks. We'll put them in there of when we're talking class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, everybody, please subscribe to us. Check us out on social media. Matt Hatfield does an incredible job. I go to Matt. He's the modern day Doug Dowdy. Matt, you got Matt Case. I want to meet Doug Dowdy. I want to have him on. That guy's a storyteller. I used to call him and say, "Where's Notebook?" On Friday afternoon, because he was the scoop. Matt Hatfield's got Virginia Preps, his top 10 polls. I watch them like nobody's business because he's doing this for a living. Danny, we're looking forward to your Virginia Preps articles on the Richmond teams. And Jay, we'll have you on again. Larry, I know it's been a long day. We really appreciate you. Larry just got off a vacation, was out of the country. So you've been a trooper, and wow. I'm picking Maury in class 5. And Maury, all you people in Norfolk and Green Run, give us some love. We've had Coach McCain on too last year. We'll get him back on. So, guys, really appreciate it. And for my partner, Rusty Bird, who's a public servant and is working his tail off, this has been Kirk Hilliard for the Kirk and Bird Show, and we are out.